BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Alasdair Lamont, and this is the Scottish Football Podcast, back once again to kickstart your week with the final word on the weekend's action.
Tierney goes round the goalkeeper and slots it home, and there's no flag, so Václav Tierney goes away to celebrate.
It was a good couple of days for Rangers, who overtook Aberdeen into second and narrowed the gap on leader Celtic.
You're always disappointed when you draw a game that you feel you should win. I thought that we arrived into all the areas that we wanted to, often enough. We obviously high percentage of the ball. Probably we didn't work the keeper enough.
The champions dropping league points for just the second time this season, while at the other end...
Into the middle it goes, the header! James Penrice, absolute bull of a header from the edge of the 6-yard box. Sends it past Josh Ray. What a header from James Penrice!
Hearts moved up to 10th with a much-needed win for them and their manager Neil Critchley.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
I'm joined for this episode by Ian Murray, most recently Wraith Rovers manager, no doubt itching to get back into the game. How are you this evening, Ian?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Thank you.
Good show. And also joining us, Rory Loy, a regular contributor. How are you this evening, Rory?
Yes, good, thanks, Al. I'm good.
Good show. Well, let's get right to it. It is the evening of Sunday, the 22nd of December, as we record. We'll delve into the action shortly. But before we get into that in more depth, let's quickly run through the headlines. Dundee United held Celtic to a 0-0 draw at Tannadice on Sunday lunchtime. It's just the second time the champions have dropped league points this season. The lead at the top has been reduced to 9 points over Rangers, who beat Dundee 1-0 at Ibrox on Saturday to leapfrog Aberdeen into second. Don's now 6 games without a win after losing 3-1 to Hibs at home. St Johnstone are now bottom after losing 2-1 at Hearts, who climbed from the foot of the table up to 10th. Oisin Smith's 90th minute free kick earned 10-man St Mirren a 2-1 win over Ross County and Dingwall, and Motherwell and Kilmarnock drew 1 each on Friday night. And in the SWPL, Glasgow City remain top after they destroyed Dundee United 7-0, while second place Rangers lost 3-0 to Hibs at home.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, let's start at Tannadice, where Celtic and Dundee United played out a goalless draw. Ian, I'm going to come to you on this. First of all, it was a terrific result, you'd have to say, for Jim Goodwin and Dundee United. From what you saw of it, was it a deserved point, do you think?
Yeah, firstly, like you said, fantastic result. Again, you want to win all your games, especially at home, but to draw with Celtic, it's probably a bonus point for Dundee United, if Jim's been truthfully honest as well. And United fans, albeit, like I said, you want to try and win all your games, it's still a point more than a lot of teams have got against Celtic this season. I think defensively, deserved a point defensively because they were really, really solid, really, really organised. I think that's one thing that Jim's always kind of done with his teams. Are pretty solid in the main of his teams that he sends out. They'll be a little bit disappointed that they didn't create really anything going forward. Had a couple of opportunities to spring on the counter-attack, like I say, especially at home at Tannadice, where it's a really, really hard place to go most of the time for away teams. But overall, I think Jim will certainly be very, very happy this season.
I just wonder, when he saw that the Celtic team that was named very much changed defence particularly, but obviously Nicholas Kuhn also missing. I mean, do the players, when they look at that and see that Celtic are a little bit under strength, does that give them a boost pre-match? Do you think that affected things?
I would say it would. I think every player waits for that opposition team to come in, and when you see the team and there's certain players that aren't playing, it gives you that little bit of kick. Again, it can be a double-edged sword because you can underestimate the lads that are coming in who are desperate to prove themselves to the manager and obviously good players anyway. But I would have thought it would have given Dundee United certainly a little kick before kick-off, that's for sure.
Rory, the first time that Celtic have dropped points away from home in the league, it's actually, I guess, if you take the Dinamo Zagreb game and the League Cup final over 90 minutes, it's kind of 3 draws in a row. I mean, they dominated possession as they more or less always do, Celtic, but just 3 shots on target. Do you think there'll be much of a concern there for Brendan Rodgers at this time of year?
No, I don't think so. I think when you put those results, those 3 draws into context, an away draw in the Champions League, which when was the last time you could say a Celtic side came away from an away game in the Champions League and thought we should have won? It's a good point, it's on the board, and I think they'll get the job done. At home to Young Boys, they lifted a trophy at the end of that second draw after the 120 minutes. And yes, that'll probably be the most disappointing one, the Dundee United one, of course. However, Dundee United have got a way of playing against the Old Firm. They started against Rangers up at Tannadice in the first meeting with them at the start of the season and got it wrong. Jim Goodwin made a couple of changes. Then, they finished the game strongly, and that's how he set up at Ibrox, and that's how he set up again today with the 4 at the back, Adebayo on the bench. He normally plays a 3 at the back. So they found a way of playing, and, I was asked to describe Dundee United recently, and I would say they're a jack of all trades, master of none. They're very good at everything. I wouldn't say they're outstanding at one particular thing, and that comes back to what Ian's saying. If you're organised, you're hard to beat. They've got strong runners in midfield. Will Ferry at left back's got a good delivery. Yes, they would have liked to have been up the pitch more. Dalby maybe didn't have the influence he's had previously. But, a fantastic point for Dundee United. And all things considered, I don't think Brendan Rodgers and Celtic, whilst they would have liked the 3 points, I don't think they'll be too, distracted or disappointed that they come away with a point.
Yeah, still 9 points clear at the top. It's a very, very healthy lead. Just going back to United for a moment, Ian, because obviously your Wraith Rovers side pushed them really for the title all the way. It's a very different Dundee United side. Obviously, Jim Goodwin's done a lot of work in the transfer market over the summer. How impressed have you been by the way that he's taken that team and adapted to the Premiership? What's that? They're just a couple of points, I think, behind. A point behind Motherwell now in 5th place. It's been a good start for him, hasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly has. I think Jim deserves a lot of credit for what he's done in the summer and the way he started the season. Again, experience. I think when you look back historically, especially the last 3 or 4 years of the teams that have came up from the Championship, they've actually done pretty well in their first season. It's always maybe been their second season that they've kind of forward a little bit. So I'll be keen or interesting to see how that pans out next season, because I don't see Dundee United being in any sort of danger whatsoever this season. I think they're pretty consistent in the way they pick up points. They don't really go 3, 4, 5, 6 games even without something on the scoreboard. Now, expect that to continue. Good players in there, a little bit of a mix again, like Rory was saying. They've got a few Scottish guys who have been in both Premier League and Championship. They've brought in a few foreign players, and so far so good for United.
That's a decent ball. Sanders with a good head away, breaks the edge of the box. Spittle! Oh, what a strike that is from Blair Spittle! We talked about it in the first half, that he's got that ability. It fell to him and he drilled it home. Absolutely no chance.
Well, let's talk about a couple of teams who do have maybe some relegation issues to contend with. The other game on Sunday was at Tynecastle, 2-1 Hearts against St Johnstone. Rory, that is a massive victory, isn't it, for Hearts, and Neil Critchley in particular, who hasn't been in that job for a long time, but it was already coming under quite considerable pressure with the side sitting bottom.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't... Listen, Hearts are not where they would expect to be, not where they should be, based on the squad they've got, based on the signings they've made. And, I think it's a little bit of a concern that you're looking at a good hit from Blair Spittle to win you a game at home to St Johnstone. That's no disrespect to St Johnstone, but when you look at a team that's finished 3rd last season, it's one of these ones where, it'll come, it'll turn. Yes, they won 2-1. I don't think it was particularly convincing, but they did get 3 points, and that is absolutely vital, especially after Thursday, where the club would have been disappointed the first time they would have been able to play European football after Christmas for goodness knows how long. And they followed it up with, yes, a win, but I don't think it was a win where the fans are going away overly convinced with what they've watched. So I'll be honest with you, up until, I still have concerns for Hibs, but if you'd asked me 2-3 weeks ago, I would have put Hibs in the bottom 2 and Hearts would have been able to pull their way out of it. But the last couple of weeks, it has went the complete opposite way. So yes, it was a win, but I think they would be asking for more, the Hearts support.
Ian, I was listening to the radio coverage of that game earlier on. Alan Preston was talking about the fact that Neil Critchley, hasn't had a transfer window in which that he can try and influence the squad. But we're talking in the office with I won't name the people who are disputing this, but a couple of folks saying, well, does he actually deserve a transfer window? It's a big game, obviously, against Hibs coming up, but do you feel that a manager should always get at least one window, maybe even more, obviously, from a manager's perspective, to try and put their imprint on a squad before they can really be judged?
It's a good question. I think Rory covered quite a lot as well there. I think that Neil Critchley's got in there with a good squad. I think when you look at the squad on paper, it's a strong squad, that's for sure. Results haven't been great. Obviously had that wee sort of honeymoon spell where they beat St Mirren and they won in Europe, and everybody kind of got themselves up again, and it kind of went south a little bit. I would suggest Neil would have got the window, regardless of the day result, regardless of the result against Hibs on Boxing Day. I think Hearts are probably in this for the long term rather than the short term, and I think the supporters kind of realise that and take that on board. And certainly all the sounds that I hear coming out of Hearts, that the players are pretty positive towards what he's trying to do. Now, that's being positive to what they're doing is one thing, getting results is another thing, but certainly today's result, like Rory, I wouldn't be getting too carried away about it. Again, no disrespect to St Johnstone, but these are games Hearts supporters 100% expect to win, especially at home.
There's been a lot of chat as well about the analytics and things, and the new company coming in, and they simply have to give them a window, because if you are appointing a manager based on, certain measures and certain things, then the thing that caveats that and comes with it is the fact that they'll go out and sign players, and the structure is almost that Neil Critchley's the coach, and that's kind of how open they've been about it. The data is used to sign players and he's used to coach them. So, I think it's silly to talk about them being under pressure. I don't think that's the case at all. The only way it would get to that point is if they severely thought they could get relegated, which I don't think they will. But, any chat of Neil Critchley, not being in the job come January and getting to work with players that are signed for him, if that's how it works, I think is ridiculous, to be totally honest with you.
What about St Johnstone then? I mean, that's them now bottom under new management themselves. Simo Valakari has changed the style, Ian, but so they may be a little bit more easy in the eye, but they also need to be effective and get results, of course.
Yeah, I think that's probably, when you look at the league, it's one of the most interesting situations that's evolving throughout the season, because obviously they changed the manager pretty early. I was actually at the game at Easter Road, the game before they decided to change Craig, and there wasn't a lot in the game. Hibs weren't particularly great that day either, but it was a very, very close game. It could have went another way, and St Johnstone could have got something out of the game. So they obviously felt they had to make a change at that point, for whatever reason that is, and the aim is not to be where they are. So, Simo Valakari's had a little bit of praise, I think, since he's came in, but ultimately they're bottom of the league, and St Johnstone are a team that are down there maybe most seasons. They've had a wee flurry here and there. Obviously winning a couple of cups as well back in the COVID sort of era as well. But nobody wants to get relegated. At the moment, they're looking a bit of bother, I have to say. They are picking up points here and there, but not enough to keep them off the bottom. It's certainly not enough to push them towards the top six.
You're listening to the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Let's cast our eye back at the Saturday games. We'll start at Ibrox. Rory, you were saying you were at Ibrox for the 1-0 win over Dundee. I mean, it looks like from what I've seen, they were dominant in the game, but maybe characteristically of their season, creating opportunities and not taking them. Was there a bit of almost like a backlash, a reaction to the disappointment of the weekend before in the League Cup final?
No, I wouldn't have said so. I think they came out and they bossed the first half, I have to say. Dundee were very much camped in, 5-4-1, couldn't get out. And Dundee have got players that are capable of getting themselves up the pitch. Para Holden played up front, but nothing really stuck. And then when it did stick, your midfielders that you would look to come up and support them, Cameron and Tiffany, they had far too much ground to make up because the ball was going from back to front. Rangers dominated the first half and some lovely passages of play as well. I've watched, many a game this season where Rangers have scraped a 1-0 win and it's been a horrible watch. It wasn't like that on Saturday. Credit where it's due. They had some nice passages of play. Tierney's a lovely footballer to watch. But I have to say, in the second half, Dundee came out, and I think Tony Docherty thought, you know what, I need to tweak things because it's going to be, death by 1,000 cuts here if we continue to defend so deep. And they did. Don't get me wrong, they left themselves open, and Rangers should and could have scored 4 or 5 goals. Egerman misses a sitter, bad decision making. However, Dundee could have nicked it, a draw out of that game, because they had chances themselves and they were very guilty as well of poor decision making in the final third. So, no, listen, he's come in for a lot of criticism, Philip Clement, after these 1-0 wins, but they were thoroughly deserved of the win on Saturday, and it should have been more.
In terms of Dundee, Ian, obviously a brilliant season for them last time round in their first season back in the Premiership. A bit more testing for them this season. Do you still see them as top 6 contenders?
Oh yeah, I certainly think they're contenders for the top 6. I'm not sure if we'll get there, but I think that they're going to be there or thereabouts. I think that top 6 sort of cut off just depends on your run of form towards the end of that time. But certainly, I think Tony's done a wonderful job there since he went. And again, a team that's came up just a couple of years ago, and he's got them now. Now we're talking about top 6, and can he push them on? I think that's the mark of how well they've done. And going to Ibrox, as everybody knows, is really, really difficult, regardless of how good you are, regardless of your league position. So to be in the game, to take a negative into a positive, to be into the game with 10, 15 minutes to go 1-0 down, it gives you belief, and it shows you how well organised and how experienced that Tony is, and how hard Dundee are to beat. You need a little bit of luck when you go to these places. You need a little bit of fortune. You need your big players to turn up, and you need to take your chances. By all accounts yesterday, it sounds like Rangers more than deserved their 1-0 win, but certainly I think Dundee and Tony will take a lot of heart of that performance, if not the result.
Just going back to Rangers, I'm not sure that anyone really believes there is a title race going on, but certainly, ahead of the Old Firm game on the 2nd of January, Rangers very much have to keep winning. They've reduced that Celtic lead by a couple of points this weekend. St Mirren away on Boxing Day, how big a test is that for them?
It's a test of their mental strength, I think. You look at Celtic's fixtures, they've got 2 home games, the first being against Motherwell, where you would expect them to go into that game being at least 9 points ahead. And there's been too many false dawns at Rangers, Al, in terms of there's been certain results, whether it be the 3-3, which ended up in the kind of the moral victory statements, which didn't go down well. You even go back to the previous season, they won 3-0 once the league was won, when Ange Postecoglou was at Celtic. He'd made a raft of changes, Ange Postecoglou, but Rangers fans felt that was a building block for the future, but it's never transpired that way. So look, Rangers have been very good domestically and in Europe over the last 6 weeks, and they were competitive in the final. They looked every bit as good as Celtic on that particular day. I don't think throughout the season they have, but on that particular day. However, Rangers fans and Rangers players have been at this point on numerous occasions over the last number of years, and it's proven fruitless. So the only way that Philip Clement is going to convince the Rangers fans, because I don't think the last 6 weeks is enough, is to win the next 2 games, beat Celtic at Ibrox, go 6 points behind. And I think that'll rejuvenate everyone at the club to say, do you know what, let's get our signings right in January, and you just never know.
Talking of St Mirren then, who are next up, as I say, for Rangers.
Ossian Smith. He scores! A 90th minute winner from Ossian Smith! Well, Stephen Robinson was talking up his set-piece prowess pre-match, and boy has he delivered! With a strike almost certain to be the match winner.
They got that last minute winner against Ross County. That felt like a big result for them, Ian, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was a huge result going up there, particularly with 10 men during the game and getting the 3 points. As Dingwall's an incredibly hard place to go. That's what Ross County build their sort of season on, is our home games. So to go up there and get 3 points, really, really kicks them on again. Again, kind of a bit like your Dundee, if you like. Really fantastic season last season, getting into Europe. But again, experienced manager, very well organised, adding that little bit more attacking flair to the squad every season. So St Mirren will be really happy. I think if they can go into this new year, try and pick up another 3 points before that, then they'll be very well placed going into the second half of the season.
Ross County are just a point above St Johnstone, Rory. Will Don Cowie be a little concerned about their form at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're in that position in the league, then, a precarious position, then there's got to be some concern. You might not see it outwardly, but what will give them faith is it is so tight in there. You look at Hibs, they've had a good run of 5 games and they find themselves looking up the way and everyone's kind of positive about them and things like that. But, I wouldn't have said, no disrespect to Ross County, they possess the quality and strength and depth like some Hibs do. most people think Hearts will get it right eventually. So you look around them and I just don't see Kilmarnock's, Dundee's, these types of clubs being in any bother. So I think the last thing Ross County and Don Cowell want is for it to kind of over the next few weeks and after the festive period become a two-horse shootout for 12th and 11th in terms of the league table. He'll believe in his squad that they've got the strength to get away from that, but I do think that the league will really take shape come these next 4 or 5 games over the next period, and I do expect Ross County to be in a relegation scrap, I've got to be honest.
Yeah, kind of looking that way. You mentioned Hibs there. I mean, probably the result of the weekend in terms of the Premiership, going up to Pittodrie and winning 3-1.
It's a poor ball, picked up well, Triantis. Chance here for Martin Boyle, levels up, Boyle! One mistake and Aberdeen are undone, and it's joy for Martin Boyle.
Talking of managers under pressure, Ian, David Gray definitely was. You know, it looked like the kind of writing was on the wall at one stage, but they have definitely picked up in recent times, and that win underlines it, doesn't it?
Yeah, obviously. Again, a club that I've seen quite a lot of this season, a club that I know a lot of people in and around in terms of the atmosphere, supporters, I mean, by that. And it's amazing how quickly it can change, because the last 24 hours, there's been a lot of guys texting me about going to Derby and the game on the 28th, which maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a lot of guys saying, do you want tickets? Because I'm not going. So that's how quickly it can change. But a fantastic result for Hibs yesterday, I have to say. I don't think too many would have expected that, especially the way that Aberdeen have done this season. But Hibs have picked up in the last 4 to 5 weeks. I think that's 3 wins out of the last 4. If they can try and, if they go to Tynecastle and get that win, then they go back to Easter Road against Kilmarnock and it's 4 out of 5. And suddenly the Hibs fans and Hibs support are quite buoyant about going to Tynecastle now, but certainly 2 to 3 weeks ago, like I say, they were dreading it.
And almost conversely, Rory, Aberdeen's dip in form has been quite remarkable. No wins in 6 out of the top 2 now. How has that early season momentum just fallen away, do you think?
Listen, a lot of things can affect momentum, whether it's the 6-0 loss in the League Cup, and they did bounce back from that, but generally speaking, there's a number of factors, but I always think, and I always look when clubs are going through a more difficult spell, and Ian will probably be able to speak better about this, but I think, if you look at when Jimmy Tilleen came in and he sat down with the board at the start of the season and they looked at what they would want to achieve, they got to the semi-final of the League Cup. Third place definitely would have been up there if it wasn't that, and at the very least making top 6. So yes, over the last kind of condensed period, it's not been good. If these results had been spread out more, a couple of wins and a loss, it's because it's all happened at the same particular time. That does cause slight concerns because you do want to turn that corner. I would just be, hesitant to talk too much about the dip in form at this moment in time because they're still third. They were second. They've dropped to third, but it's very difficult, I can imagine, as a manager to stay calm and get rationale and context because fans aren't always good at that. But I think if you do provide that, then, Jimmy Tilleen, I don't think he'll be too concerned, but he will want to get that win on the board, next league win on the board as soon as possible, and I do think they'll finish third comfortably.
Before we wrap things up, Ian, I just want to get your take, if I can. I don't know to what extent you feel that you can talk about it, but your former club, Raith Rovers, obviously have just lost another manager in slightly different circumstances. Neil Collins, who obviously succeeded you in September, has taken over at Sacramento in the States. What do you make of the situation at your old club? They're clearly not faring as well as they did under you last season. The playoffs still look a fair way off for them.
Yeah, I think it caught everybody off guard a little bit, yesterday's news, that's for sure, apart from obviously maybe the club who've known since the start of last week and possibly Neil, who's maybe known for a bit longer. They've not hit the heights of last season. I think it was always going to be really, really hard, regardless who the manager was, to replicate or better on where we were last year. I still think they've got a really, really good squad. I think they've got top 2, top 3 in terms of strength and depth in the league. But it's just not quite happened. But they'll be bitterly disappointed to lose a manager. I think nobody can see what's in the future. I think the wording of the statement is always hard to tell, but to have I'm not privy to any knowledge, but I'm reading between the lines. To have a clause like that in a contract where, regardless of what the financial situation was with Neil, automatically allowed him to leave. That's how I read it. It's very, very strange to have that in a contract. That kind of tells me what I thought at the time, that Neil had them over a barrel a little bit when he joined Debrief Rovers. But again, I'm not privy to any knowledge of the insides of what's happened there.
Okay, well, we'll watch that vacancy, how that develops over the next week or two. Anyway, time to wrap things up. Our thanks to Ian Murray and indeed Rory Loy. Thanks for listening also to you guys. Remember, we'll be here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every weekday morning. So to make sure you don't miss out, just subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Thanks for listening.
The Scotland Rugby Podcast is now available every Tuesday. Join me, Andy Burke and Tom English. Just head to BBC Sounds and subscribe to the Scotland Rugby Podcast.
It's just seismic stuff.
There's bucket hats as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is this a rugby podcast or is this a fashion podcast?
Why can't it be a bit of both?
Rugby. Let's get on to rugby.
There's a lot to be excited about.
Today's guest, John McGuigan.
Clubs are at the absolute bedrock of everything Scottish rugby's about.
The Rugby Sports Sound Podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.
We cannot help but be so excited.
It's going to be the centre of the rugby universe.
BBC Sounds.